But welcome to Stay Paid. This is
Stay Paid.
This is Josh.
And this is Luke. And if you can't tell, I've lost my voice. Can you tell?
I can tell your voice is a little...
It's a little shot.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
What happened?
It's weird.
No conferences?
It's weird.
Concerts?
Nothing happened.
No, nothing.
Nothing happened. I was here till about, 10:30 last night doing some work. And Graz was here and Nick was here. You weren't here, dude. We were missing you. We were like, where's Josh? The team is here and Josh is not here. Nick, our VP of sales, Mike, our VP of ops, but our VP of marketing was nowhere to be found.
Nowhere to be found.
But I don't know. I woke up today and now my voice is shot. But it's going to be a good podcast anyways.
Yeah.
I will still keep it hyped. I got my Monster Energy drink.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a different podcast. We're going to take a break a little bit from the sales and marketing side of things. We're going to turn towards team building. So today here on the podcast, we have Allan Burkley. He is a commercial banker focusing on helping businesses with their financial growth, debt structure, and cash flow management. But his passion, and what we're going to focus here on the podcast today, is talking about how culture can make a positive impact on an organization's top and bottom line. I know we have a lot of listeners, your brother included, Luke, who's leading a team, trying to grow a team, running an office or a branch, constantly looking to not only hire great talent, but how do you retain them, keep them engaged, and then from a business owner standpoint, really understand how much to invest in that, what the return's going to look like, what do the numbers actually look like there. So it's going to be great. We're going to dig into this with you, Allan, because I know you spent a lot of time really quantifying the value of employee engagement, what that means to be to the profitability of a company. So welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. As a loyal subscriber to your podcast, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Allan, we appreciate you subscribing. I actually had the privilege of getting to know Allan a little bit. He's part of a radio show called Executive Leader Radio. And I got the honor of being interviewed there. And that was the first time I got to meet Allan. And it's interesting, this topic of culture, as I've kind of done, this business with ReminderMedia and had the privilege of leading people, I always tell people now, the hardest part of business is people. Like, it is the hardest. People ask me all the time, what's the hardest part about your job? I say it's people. It's 100% of the time. It's always people that are the hardest part. But the key to business and business itself is people. Mm-hmm. So it's such an interesting thing because most of us approach business from product standpoint. We go in and we think we're going to be inventors and create these ideas and we focus purely on whether it's transactional products, all those things. And you don't realize that truly if you focus on people, all the other things, not that they're ancillary, but they're kind of ancillary, those will all fall into place once you build a firm foundation of people. So before we dive into the topic, Allan, kind of introduce yourself to the audience. Give your story, what you're doing now, how you got into commercial banking and really running a team. Give people a little bit of taste of who you are.
Sure. Well, I can tell you right now, I run a commercial banking group that covers for Meridian Bank. We're headquartered out of Malvern, Pennsylvania. We recently completed an IPO about a year and a half ago, and which was a real success for us. We've grown. We've just crossed over this past first quarter. We've grown organically the entire time. This is not by acquisition. We've just crossed over the $1 billion mark, so that is absolutely huge for us. And that right there is a testament to our CEO's ability, which is Chris Annis, his ability to go ahead and build the right teams. Mm-hmm. Because it's not only, we specialize as a bank in the commercial space. So the middle market and small business space is really where our wheelhouse is. And what Chris has done for the bank at large, what he did was he brought in a team, and we've now gone out. We've got a lot of experienced people, but we start with a ground up model where we get people out of college. They do internships with us. And then they graduate, and I'll walk you through the progression of what a commercial lender and a commercial team leader does in a moment. But, the fact that we've been around for 15 years, we just had our 15th birthday, if you will.
Congrats.
A few days ago, in fact.
15 years to be able to cross $1 billion.
15 years, $1 billion. That really shows that. And I tell this to businesses. That is a testament to not only our ability to attract commercial relationships, but retain it.
Right.
It's one thing to bring business in, and you could, we're all sales guys here. We can give people great sales pitches. But at the end of the day, if you're not properly servicing people and the business is running around the back door, it's all for naught.
Totally.
And say for people, too, if you're bringing in employees, and again, I'll get into all this, and you're bringing in employees, and it's just a constant turnover, the book of business that they bring, well, guess what? The book follows them out the door as well. So It's very, very short-lived. But as probably most bankers will tell you, we actually don't grow up saying, I want to be a banker. I know it's a novel idea, right? And unfortunately, lately, banks have been making, especially since the Great Recession, banks have been making headlines for all the wrong reasons. So I think right now, bankers, mortgage bankers, commercial bankers, and so forth, I like to think the mortgage bankers worse than the commercial bankers are certainly maybe lower than lawyers at this point. So.
No comment. No comment.
So, I grew up, I was a Jersey Shore kid, grew up going to the beach every day. I actually grew up, went to a grade school that was probably about a block and a half off the beach. So it's really kind of cool to have your phys ed classes and your science classes, go and pick up crabs and so forth on the beach. Really, really cool. Not a lot of people could do that. So I knew when I wanted to go away to school, my mom went to Penn. So of course it was, you're going to go to Penn. And for me, I wanted, just big and warm. I wanted sun and fun and the whole 9 yards. Well, I went to Arizona State, so you get a lot of sun and you get a lot of fun and you get a lot of sand like we do on the beach, just no water. So it's completely dry. So I'm at Arizona State and, I'm studying econ and philosophy, which was, philosophy was more of both of them were passions. My mom had graduated and basically said, hey, look, take us. Study things that are of interest to you, because at the end of the day, when you get into the workforce, you're going to be one of 30 candidates, and it's, quite frankly, it's who they like. Who do they think that they could, enjoy on the team, and to this day, that's resonated with me, because when I go to market and I'm talking to new businesses, I flat out tell them, look, guys, if you're talking to me, you're talking to 4 or 5 other different banks, so it's no different. Seeing my proposal here, everyone's right around the same pricing, rate, structure, and so forth. So it's really no different. So you're going to have, just like you were hiring a key person for your organization, you're going to have, 5 different resumes, and everyone's going to be qualified. You're going to have 5 different commercial banking proposals on the table, and all of them are going to look good. And I always tell people, look, I'll be honest with you. I want you to choose the same way you would choose a key employee. They're all equally qualified. So pick someone that you feel you can really work with, that you really enjoy their time. And that's what I would just simply ask of the bank that you choose. So thankfully for me, knock on wood, I win much more than I lose. And it's, quite frankly, it gets back to the team, but we have an absolutely great team here. And we win by strength of numbers. We can bring out a team of talent and everyone who have great personalities and are very competent with what they do. But getting back to, my mom's advice, she says, go pick a major that you think you like. So I study econ, study philosophy. And, now I graduate and, fast forward, I come back east, which lo and behold, as beautiful as Arizona State is, most people that go out to the Phoenix area, you get out there, it's beautiful, but not many people go to Arizona State from the state of Arizona. And in fact, I had this person tell me, freshman year, you're living in the dorms, and they said, you're probably not going to stay here past, 6-7 years. Right. No snow, no leaves to rake, nothing. It's sunny all the time, but it becomes like Groundhog's Day, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I remember I came back east and I think it was the springtime and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. This is so amazing just to see a change of season. So moved back and I joined actually, we talked about this a little bit earlier before we were recording, but I was actually I was a junior compliance person for ING Securities. And I thought, wow, this would be great. If I ever want to move back out to Arizona, ING Funds, I believe, there's a whole family of INGs at the time, was out of Scottsdale. So like, this is perfect. I'll cut my teeth here. And then if I ever want to move, I can relocate, stay within the same company. This is great. Things don't always go as planned. And next thing you know, I found myself working on the kind of underwriting home equity loans. And not that there's anything wrong with home equity loans, but it just wasn't what I was kind of set up for. And I had a friend in the group that says, hey, I have a friend of mine over at First Union, and he works downtown, and I go downtown, and guy's wearing a nice spiffy suit, and says, you're getting a ton of money doing this. So, wow, okay, this is cool. I knew nothing about banking. And, so I walk in, and, early on, looking back, I don't know why I raised my hand and said this, but it worked out well. I kind of raised my hand and said, hey, is there anything else I could do here? This really isn't really piquing my interest, which, nowadays you go to employers and you tell them that and they're thinking, oh, this kid, he thinks he's, better than the position that he has. So they gave you pretty much like I don't know, so, in small business they do, which in small business at most banks, for the most part, credit exposure less than $500,000. There's a number of different parameters, but that's kind of a loose way that's across the U.S. of how they define small business from a banking standpoint. So they pretty much give you a one-page scoring, on credit scoring, and if you pulled off different segments of a personal tax return and a business tax return, and the guy gave it to me and basically says, look, if you could figure this out and you think you're going to like talking to businesses, you join my group. So I was like, yeah, anything was better than what I was doing. It was nothing against it, but it was, opening up accounts, balancing people's checkbooks. It just really wasn't my speed. And, from there I was successful. They had a program back then where if you had reached your goals for 2 consecutive years, it had to be consecutive. So you couldn't, kind of have the whipsaw and sandbag and so forth. So 2 consecutive years, what they would do is they would sponsor you for something. And I remember at the time we had our wealth group was saying, well, we should sponsor you and groom you for wealth. And, and then I had another person that was working on the corporate banking deals. And those were the really sexy deals that you see within the market, and everyone recognizes the brands. And she did that. And she said, look, Allan, take them up on the credit program because credit is worth its weight in gold. So I knew I wasn't an accounting major, but I took enough to understand my way around accounting. And I went into credit, and most of it is accounting. Most of my job right now, from the technical standpoint, is about 80% accounting, 20% finance. So
don't get me started on accounting. Everybody knows how I feel.
I know. So I took them up on the credit training program, and I was in it, and it was great, and I understood the significance of it. It really is worth it to go through, especially a major bank at the time. I think we were Wachovia at the time, and I remember I had graduated from that program, and I went to her, and of course, I think I know everything. And I'd go there, and she'd quickly point out that I don't know much. So she goes, look, if you're really serious, go and become an analyst somewhere. So I could have either stayed there, and might mean nothing to you, but spreads is basically taking a number of different fiscal periods and, presenting it in a horizontal analysis. So it's just basically data entry. And you
sounds riveting.
And the people, it's one of those jobs. They're career credit people at the time, Wachovia, and like one person will retire, and there'll be 20 people competing for that one position. Just go to a community bank, and you'll do everything, and that is so true. You did I started in not only doing the spreads, but starting to do write-ups, and I realized as much as I thought I knew from coming through a big credit trading program,
right?
I think I got my first write-up back, and my boss gave me, this is being generous, a D- on my first paper. And a guy that who actually works with me now, he works on another team, took me aside and says, don't feel bad, Allan. I think I got the same. It was all covered in blue. Now I'm in that position where now the guys that report up to me, I cover. I don't do red. I think he did his in red. Now I do mine in all blue. So it's not as I feel
softening
like
the blow.
Are you giving D- now?
What's that?
Are you giving D- now?
Yeah, some people get it. So,
well, that's one of the hardest parts of when you're motivating a team is giving negative, constructive feedback.
Well, that's the thing. It's because I've been there. I've been in their shoes. I've been in the credit person's shoes, and you get the tap. If you have a halfway decent personality in credit, you'll get the tap on the shoulder and say, hey, do you want to come out in the line and manage a portfolio, and then from there, hey, do you want to? Really, essentially, half of my job from a relationship management standpoint. And I'm a producing team leader, by the way, so I still maintain portfolio for myself. It's a great position to be in because I get to pick and choose the companies that I want to bank,
right?
Versus handing them off to other guys on the team. But so you get the tap on the shoulder, decent personality. Let's give the kid a shot. And half of my job is developing business for the bank. That's where we make any new business across any industry you're in. That's the lifeblood of every business,
right?
And then managing portfolio, and that's the credit aspect of that.
Gotcha.
And then if you're successful at that, I recently left a larger bank, and the same person that gave me the tap on the shoulder was at Meridian, and he's running C&I banking, which is commercial and industrial banking, and said, hey, look, we're looking to expand our footprint. and I'd like you to run the Philadelphia and one of the neighboring counties, Delaware County, that particular market. And I'd like you to hire up your team. And, I knew some good guys from the banks that I had worked with in the past. And, thankfully we all enjoyed such a really kind of good rapport that they said yes, which was always a nice thing. And then I had another individual who was, his version of me, 15 years earlier, where you're graduating the credit group. And now you're ready to, start to be a, quote unquote junior lender. So that's how I ended up where I am today.
Now, how big is your team?
My team right now is 3 people.
Okay.
So we keep them in small pods, and essentially what we do is we'll have myself, we'll have some lenders, and then we'll have a relationship assistant, which is basically like when I'm out on calls, she's there in the background. She's basically me without any sales goals.
Okay, that makes sense.
So she's absolutely great at what I do, and quite frankly, she's the reason I look good in front of people. She's the glue that holds everything together. And then I have also support staff on the retail side with regards to the deposit accounts and the deposit products and so forth.
Gotcha.
And she is absolutely a stud as well. So I've got 2 great women that I work with that really keep me afloat.
So, when you think of like culture, because I'm curious to get your take on this, right? Because, this is what everybody's trying to build. They're trying to build a great culture. What does culture mean to you? How would you describe it?
Culture it's a behavior. I mean, I like to, I'm not a Ohio State fan. They beat us in the Rose Bowl, but Jim Tressel once said that leadership isn't a position or rank. It's not a title. It's a behavior. And it really is a behavior of serving others. And that to me is a culture. The culture is when you look around any organization, understand that we're all a clear thing that any business has to have is an overarching mission. What are we here for? The mission isn't as simple as we want to make the owner money. I would think, but that's
right.
There is a greater good. And when you look around, you look to your left, you look to your right, the people that you work with, they're in the foxhole with you. So, I mean, they're in there. We're taking bullets. And that's just the reality of it. So we're all in this together. So that for me is culture. It's a behavior. It's and they're resonating behaviors. They're behaviors that are grounded in altruism. It's caring about one another, not simply stick and carrot behaviors,
right.
Which is, those work, but those work on a very short term. And when someone once asked me about, how would what would be the benefit of having a sustainable high performance culture for any organization? I simply looked at him and said this, let me ask you something. Do you like making money? Yeah. Now, let me ask you another question. Do you like making money over a sustainable basis, not just choppy interval basis, but over a sustainable long-term basis? Yeah, I like the sound of that. And I said, well, would you like it even better if I told you that you could do that right now, and you could do it at very little cost to what you already have going on? I said, well, absolutely. And that's essentially what it is. These aren't stick and carrot is you're overpaying for talent, right? And again, everyone knew what our bonus was last year. We in our minds, we feel like we've always worked harder the next year, and we always feel like we're always. I mean, again, it's a cognitive bias. We're anchored in our last salary and or bonus.
That's a great point.
So it's the really a break away from and to really reset that cognitive bias of anchoring as to what's the environment look like? Do you enjoy the people you work with? Do you enjoy the direction of the company? One of the things that I think Meridian Bank does exceptionally well is what I refer to as community adjusted EBITDA. Right? So we know what EBITDA is. That's basically how we keep score of company. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. But community adjusted EBITDA is basically realigning finance with a sense of purpose. So, for example, it's not just having profit to enrich ourselves, but to give back to the communities that we serve. To be a part of nonprofits, both from sponsorship level and from from a labor standpoint in terms of actually serving. I worked with a person, I won't mention his name, but he's one of the largest philanthropists in the southeastern PA. marketplace. And he was a mentor for me because, at one point I was on the business development for a nonprofit that I serve on. And I had more or less had a dotted line to him. Super wealthy guy. You would never know it by talking to him. And a person that could have, from what his grandfather's company had begun, certainly a guy that could have been your quote-unquote trust fund kid and just rested on his laurels and kicked his feet up. And I'll tell you, he was the toughest boss I ever worked for. But he insisted, he said, my company, Allan, if you want to be in management, everyone had to serve in the communities. Everyone had to serve on boards. That is a function of being the corporation has to be a good corporate citizen, right? And look, we can't give lip service to it. We have to walk the talk.
Right.
It is critical that we walk the talk towards that. So, I mean, this bank is a pound for pound. I mean, I tell this to nonprofits. I think we've pound for pound given more than any bank I could ever think of that I've worked for. I mean, it's absolutely great. So and by the way, when I looked at the bank, that's one of the things that I judge them on their criteria. I had a really good thing going on, and I wanted to make sure that I want to go to a place that if I raise my hand and say, hey, we should be involved in this and let's get involved in that it's not a penny pinching environment.
Right.
And, what I can tell you about Chris, by the way, for me makes it really easy. And in terms of the team building, again, because our bank specializes really in the commercial space, Chris was doing what I was doing, 25, 30 years ago. So he's been there. He's done everything that I've done.
Yeah, he's walked in the shoes. Do you think that's essential to building a great culture? You have to have leaders that have walked in the shoes of the people they lead?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because, it's, you get back to sports, the best players don't make the best coaches.
Right.
Often the best coaches are the guys that, maybe never made it past the high school level. But I don't necessarily think that. I think, if anything, it helps earn the respect initially. You're going to have to earn your stripes, period. Right. But as a first impression, if a guy's been there, done that, and they're battle tested, right off the bat, the troops, if you will, are going to say, okay, we could tip our hat. He has the experience. And the guy might get in and be the most selfish person imaginable versus a person that you're kind of leery of and saying, well, this guy's never done what I did. And the guy just flat out gets it. The guy, understands, human behavior. He understands people. And look, I'm the firm believer, and I think this goes for any business that you're in. If you take a sincere and genuine interest in people, and in my case, in the commercial banking space, and also in the businesses that they run, and you do this on a consistent basis, and you demonstrate it on a consistent basis with your actions, you're going to have a very long and rewarding career, no matter what field you're in. But it starts with taking a sincere and genuine interest in people. So the guy could have been the best banker in the world if you feel like it's a blank stare when he talks to you versus actually caring. Right. You're going to work harder for the guy that really you feel has your back.
It's interesting because, what you're saying, if I'm catching what you're laying down, which I think I am, because I tend to agree, your culture is going to come from your ultimate, really vision of what you want to accomplish and your mission and core values that you stand for. And it's harder, a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, they're smaller companies. They might have, a couple people on their teams and stuff like that. So it's, in the beginning, you don't even have on paper what you stand for. It just kind of is. I know even at ReminderMedia, it was 3 years ago or something like that. We're on our 15th year, 16th year?
Yes. 17th as ReminderMedia.
Yeah, 17th as ReminderMedia. And it was only 4 years ago that we did core values. Yeah, that we did core values. But it didn't mean we didn't have them.
We were still small, and it was sort of passed on very organically and word of mouth. And then it got to the point where, hey, we hit this number, and we couldn't pass that from the top leadership anymore. We had to lay it out on paper and really think about what it was. And we spent a lot of time grilling our CEO to find out kind of, hey, how do we get what you've instilled in all of us organically onto a sheet of paper?
Yep. How do we make it to where it is that you can incentivize it, discipline on it. Like, you don't want to create your culture around carrots and sticks, but you have to build structures of carrots and sticks to lead an organization. I'm curious, in your career with your team, and then as you look back on kind of your life, I'm curious, like, how do you implement culture? Not understanding what the culture is, but then, okay, this is where, and let's just use a real estate agent as an example. This is where you want your company to be. But how do they implement that on a day-to-day? Like, what are some of the things that you do with your team from an execution standpoint to make sure the culture is being indoctrinated?
Yeah, that's a great question, because, you walk into almost any business and they've got the core values right in the lobby of the business. And, for the most part, most core values look relatively the same. And that's the golden rule. Is the common denominator in all of them. The first thing you have to do is you have to define the mission, the why we work, the what fuels the team, what's the passion there, and a way to do that, to implement that from an execution standpoint, is you want to create either call it cultural champions, cultural ambassadors, guys that aren't management, or gals that aren't management. And, but you think back to, again, sports teams, the good teams. There's always, hockey. I played hockey. So there's the guy with the C on the sweater. Okay, naturally, he's the captain. We understand that when he speaks, he's earned the right, but he's going to parrot what the coach is saying, what he's asking. But if you notice, the really good teams, they'll utilize a handful of players that don't have the C on their sweater, don't have the A on their sweater, that people would say, so when they speak and the coach goes to them and says, look, I need you to, this is important for us to rally the troops around, and you're not, quote unquote, in management. So now all of a sudden you're empowering people that aren't in management. Now all of a sudden they step up, the coach looked at me and said, I need you to help inspire people. Now all of a sudden that person is going to be, they're automatically going to elevate their game. So right off the bat, it's, again, it's defining the mission, what fuels the team, the why of what we do for work, and creating those, the cultural champions that you have. Next is you want to prioritize your people by creating an internal focus. Now, in businesses, it's a little different, where we try to create an internal and external focus. And the external focus is just simply saying, to the business owners that we bank, hey, let's put together events or roundtables where they can get together and we can talk about anything but business. We could just talk about, hey, what are you seeing in the market? How can we help you? More from just an ease of doing business, but it's not a product push or anything like that. Now, internally, this is something, so every business has a marketing plan. Now, internally, what I feel really works really well is you want to carve out a percentage of your marketing plan. And what you want to do is start matching charitable donations for people. Obviously, they have to be on organizations that are kosher with the company's values. But you could basically incentivize. So, Sally in accounts payables, comes in and just punches a time card. And all of a sudden feels that, and it's just, quite frankly, when you're in a back office role, I'm fortunate where I can control my earnings destiny. Right. I'm on the front lines. But when you're in a back office role, the only way you ever get a pay raise is by just jumping around. Right. So you move. And then, of course, turnover, as you guys know, is the absolute biggest killer for businesses. That not only impacts, we all know it impacts the bottom line. I think there's studies that say it's about 1.5 times that person's salary is just sunk lost cost. But it also impacts the top line too, because now you're losing continuity, you're impacting morale, the whole 9 yards. So one of the things to do, especially with back office, is to simply say, hey, look, we're going to match. If cancer is very important and you need someone in your life impacted by cancer, which I think unfortunately now everyone could say that in this day and age. Hey, look, if you're sponsoring something, if you're going to throw $1,000 at that, we as a business, we're going to match that. So now all of a sudden you've raised an extra $1,000 just by being here and playing on our team. So that's one way. And again, that gets back to the community adjusted EBITDA, the giving back. So now all of a sudden you're now making a person, very happy. They're not going to be banging at your door annual review season, demanding a raise and threatening to leave if they don't get their raise. They're going to say, no, this place actually cares about people, and they care about people a greater good than just simply making money, because that's money that they could have pocketed themselves. Next is you want to, I like to call this, it's more or less developing an agility through problem solving. So if you think back to like the escape the rooms, where you get a collection of people, all right, here's your puzzle. So what I find is, now I have blind spots. I've done commercial lending for the most part, my entire career. So I look at things in a very certain way. So when we have, as a business, and this again helps promote camaraderie, teamwork, but more importantly, besides that, it allows people to, if you have a corporate challenge or something that's impacting your business, for instance, in commercial banking, any bank out there is going to say we need deposits. We need deposits. We need deposits, because deposits really, that's the fuel for the money that we put on the street. Right? It's still, at the end of the day, it's always a basic savings and loan kind of model for banks. And when you develop an agility by taking a look at a challenge and then bringing people from different groups. So using banking as an example, if it's looking for how do we increase deposits and the overall customer experience, because experience is a big role of why people bank with where they bank. There's always that percentage that are just going to be rates. It's really, believe it or not, it's a very small percentage out there, thankfully. I know in mortgage banking, consumer mortgage banking, it's a little bit different, but in the commercial space, rate is very, very relative.
I would make the point that's across all industries. People care way more about experience than they do about the rate. They just want a good experience when they're shopping price. They don't even mind paying more. They just don't want to feel like you're ripping them off.
Yep.
But I know I certainly do. Yeah, as long as you're market,
as long as you're not ripping me off.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what we do in terms of these cross-cultural workshops, it's you take a common problem and you get people from various groups working on one thing per quarter, and it allows you to look at things from multiple angles, multiple perspectives, and at the end of the day, people feel, look, we want all of our employees to feel empowered, right, engaged, and energized, and that's a way of saying, hey, look, I know I'm contributing to something. And then that leads to the transparency. People have to be transparent. Now, I know with privately held business, we're a publicly traded company. So, anyone could look at our stock and anyone could, review our financial information should they choose to. Right. But for a privately held company, I do understand that they might not want to share their bottom line. It's completely understandable. But at the end of the day, what I saw works very, very well is when you have a quarterly, a town hall, which is a State of the Union. It's just, hey, it's the president of the corporation. And, he brings people together and just says, hey, look, just want to discuss the quarterly numbers. And even if you just focus on top line and a few key metrics from an operational expense standpoint. So, imagine sitting there and you say, hey, look, grew the top line by, 8%. Congratulations to, Mike and his team. They were the honey badger of that particular quarter, if you will. And then, hey, look, Mary Mary found a way to digitalize this particular product, and that resulted in a, 12% savings. And then all of a sudden Mary feels like, wow, okay, I feel pretty good. Otherwise I was given a task and didn't know why I was doing it. And, you just put your head down and okay, yes, boss, and go ahead and do it. Now you kind of realize. So now the next time that happens, again, using the transparency town hall model, it's just like, hey, look, I know when, the boss is asking me to do something, this is helping us all, and again, you're communicating what you're doing within the markets that you serve, how you're helping people.
And you're aligning everybody back to the vision and the mission.
Yeah. I'm glad you used the word alignment, because alignment is absolutely huge. We're all on a path. Right, and we're all marching in the same direction, and you want to make sure that as path sometimes becomes a little bit disorganized and people start walking around, that everyone is toeing the line, and they understand. And of course, it goes back to the vision. You have to have the vision. What are you walking for? You're not walking for the sake of walking, but you're doing that. And then finally, what I think is I find that be really, really helpful is a mentorship program within organizations. Like for instance, me. It would be, taking me, and I have two other counterparts within the greater Philadelphia market who are out in the burbs. And it's, sitting down, once a quarter and just, basically being like, if I sat in with Chris Annis, who's our CEO, chat in with Chris and just say, hey, Chris, what's an initiative that you're working on? And this was part of the program. What's an initiative that you're working on? So that allows me to ask the why. Well, why do we do it this way? Why is this important to you? You start to see the bigger picture. Seeing the bigger picture is absolutely critical. And then as you're kind of rotating amongst different departments, as you start to go up to senior management, as you're grooming them for your next generation, because again, it all dates back to attract and retain people. It's easier to, I think, attract than it is to retain, believe it or not. So this allows people to say, oh, okay, I at least see training. I don't know what the future holds for me within the organization, but I do see my skill set improving, and I do see them taking an active interest in doing this for me. So that's where I think the mentorship program helps. And then conversely, when you're a mentor to people, and I used to be a mentor to the small business group at a prior bank, and it quite frankly, it really makes you step up your game. So when you're saying, we're going out there, we're making this many sales calls a week, it's kind of like,
now I actually have to do
relax
something
doing that. So, but it really does. So you basically, and you could pinpoint within any organization, you could pinpoint the guys that you say, I look at Sam over there, and I think Sam he's talented, but he's not, becoming the best Sam that he could be as an employee. But I know that if I have a mentor someone, and you pull Sam aside, hey, Sam, look, you do a really great job doing all the sales calls. And meanwhile, that guy's doing the bare minimum, but he's capable of more. Hey, you do a great job of doing some sales calls. And, what I want you to do is work with these guys and tell them, how do you get in the door of businesses? Once you're in the door of the businesses, what are you doing? And all of a sudden the guy starts to say, I got to start walking the talk. I'm mentoring people, telling people. This is how you do it, guys.
No, I've seen that same effect. I've seen that same effect in our organization is when we have people mentor or train. We have a mentorship program in our sales team. When we have them train, it's one thing to do. It's another thing to teach. Like you have to be a master of your craft to be able to teach versus just a performer of your craft to really do. So I totally agree. I also would make the point to the audience listening that a lot of the tips you're giving in building a great culture, I think it stems from this common theme of communication. As I look back on even our own company, ReminderMedia, where things break down is lack of clarity and communication. It's where things always fall apart. It's people's perspective versus what really is reality. And unfortunately, their perspective is reality. And it's their reality. And you end up having bad communication, which ends up crumbling a team. And unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, what really is taking place doesn't really matter. And it's so small, but it's a lost cause because the communication gets so poor. And that's what's so sad.
You're right, because communication and feedback have to be frequent. They really have to be frequent. And even with businesses that we call on, and you probably do the same within your industry, you're establishing those working agreements. And we establish the working agreements with if-then statements. If I or we do this for you, then you will do this action, right?
Right.
And it's establishing that common bond, that currency that you have between you. Feel like you have skin in the game. Hey, look, this is their expectations of me, so we have to be clear with our expectations. These are our expectations, and it's a two-way street. Mm-hmm. As soon as people realize it's not a two-way street, then off they go.
Right.
It has to be a two-way street. I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things I love about my role is when I've got guys on my team, and the life of a commercial banking when you're in front of a credit committee is a little bit like Shark Tank. In the sense that I could say that's another program, right? But it's a little bit like that. I mean, you're going out there and you're pitching. I've got XYZ manufacturing company. Here's what we do, and here's how the opportunity arose, and here's what we want to do, and all that. And all the credit officers, that are all very stern, looking at you. You're going and doing that, and one of the things that I pride myself on, and I really really enjoyed, and unfortunately I work for people that don't always do this. So I see the negative side of not doing this is, hey man, we're in the foxhole together. So when you're going and you're pitching that credit to the bank, that I got your back. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to fight for you I'm going to fight for that credit just as hard as you're going to fight for it. And it's just that knowing you have that. I mean, knowing you have people above you that have got your back on things. I mean, just the morale. Not only you leave that, I mean, what's the worst thing? I mean, think about it in your, any sales job for that matter. If all you're being told is go out there and bring in business, and all of a sudden no one likes the business, we don't like it. Go out and find the next one. And I think you guys will appreciate. There's a sales joke that goes like this: there's an army platoon camped out on a beach behind a dune, and the commanding officer says, "Smith, come over here. I want you to cross over this dune in this Jeep with a machine gun, and I need you to spray the infantry on the other side." And he says, "Yes, Captain." He gets in his Jeep, he goes over the dune. Well, lo and behold, there's not infantry there. There's 10 tanks, right? So there's 10 tanks. So he takes out his grenades and he starts throwing the grenades. Well, he takes out 9 of the tanks. The 10th tank shoots a missile into the Jeep, blows up the Jeep. He survives. He's a bloody mess. He crawls off the top of the dune, gets there. Commanding officer says, "Smith, what happened?" And he says, "Well, when I went over there wasn't infantry. There were 10 tanks. I blew up 9 of the tanks." And the commanding officer says, "Well, what about the 10th tank? And while we're at it, where's my Jeep?" Right? And so as soon as salespeople begin to feel like, wow, this is what it's like working here, So it's,
that's a super valid point, man. Super valid point.
Imagine the momentum of like, hey, look, you go out there. Now, I mean, again, even from our world, we try to establish parameters of, businesses that really profile for the work that we do.
Right.
Unfortunately, we can't be generalists. There's just some things that are just kind of outside the box. But if I think, I kind of stay in my lane. I stay in my lane. There's certain industries that I do really well, and I like to do that. And again, if I'm servicing my customers very well, those guys are all testimonials.
Well, that's another key to leading a high-performance team is finding out where everybody's gifts and talents are. If anybody's read the book Good to Great, it talks about this concept of your company's a bus. It's about getting the right people on the bus. But more importantly than that, it's about getting them in the right seat of the bus. So let me ask you this, Allan, because, I'm always interested to ask everybody who comes on the podcast, what their take is on this question. Because, I have spent so many years of my life really searching for what are the formulas to success. I've kind of become a junkie when it comes to the top 3 things you need to do to become Warren Buffett type idea. Now, I know there's no magic formula. I tell people that all the time, but I do believe successful people implement routines in their life. They implement habits in their life that have driven success. And I'm just curious for you, as you look back now that you're running a whole team, where you've come from, what are the routines that you implement day in and day out that has driven success for you?
Well, I'll echo what Jocko says. I'm a huge Jocko fan, that discipline equals freedom, and it really does. I do have a routine in the morning, and quite frankly, if I get thrown off that routine for whatever reason, my day just seems like the day controls me versus me controlling the day. And that routine is I wake up at 4:30. And by the way, I actually asked this in interview questions: what time do you wake up, and how do you spend your morning? That's important to me. So
that's a great interview question.
Yeah.
That's a great interview question.
It tells me a lot. If I wake up at 8:30 and I roll out of bed and go to work, so I work up at 4:30 every morning, and it's more of it's a structure that's mind, body, soul. All right. So I wake up, I go downstairs, I get immediately, because at 4:30 it's tough waking up, especially in the mornings during the winter, and I'm going to go to the gym. So what I immediately do is I jump out of bed, I throw on my workout outfit. So now it's, especially when you lace up the sneakers, it's a whole lot tougher to get back into bed. Then I go downstairs, and as I'm making my coffee, I read a book. I read a business book. So I think the overarching secret is continuous improvement and continuous learning, never staying pat where you're at. So I read a business book. Right now I'm reading a book called Strategy That Works. Great book. Next, that's on in the batter's on deck, if you will. It's Blue Ocean Strategy. So that's next for me. It's one of those books I'm pretty familiar with, but I never actually read it.
Yeah.
So that's on. So I read that. Then I go to the gym. So the mind part is reading that, and then I go to the gym. And I live in South Philadelphia, so I'm able to walk to a gym. And I go to a gym, and I come back, and I watch a 15-minute sports program for local Philadelphia sports. And so I can at least understand what's going on in the Philadelphia sports scene. Then it's coming back, and I go upstairs and I read scripture. So I focus on that, and that's the soul aspect. I'm always looking to for maturity and an evolution of myself, both not only from a physical standpoint. As you get older, there's just different things you have to do to stay in shape and stay fit, and obviously from a business standpoint, and then just from a personal standpoint. So those things are important to me. Then I happen to shower, and by the time I'm out of the shower, I feel like I've completed a day's work. I am good to go. I am good to go.
No, that's awesome. So what would you go back and tell younger Allan? That's my last question for you. What would you go back? What advice would you give, knowing what you know now and what you've experienced?
So I'm fortunate. I'll be brief. I have no regrets, but probably a million, squared of mistakes. But for those mistakes, it's maybe who I am today. So I would say nothing at all. I would say mistakes are the results of active doing people, and that's quite frankly what it is. I'm not afraid to take risks, and that's the only way we ever grow.
That's great advice, man.
That's
great
advice.
By the way, real quick, some of the best advice I was ever given is the only way to really grow, both personally and professionally, is to do the things that you're not comfortable doing.
Yeah.
The minute that you just continually do the things you're comfortable doing, you never grow outside of that box.
Yeah,
when you constantly keep doing things that are uncomfortable for you, they then become comfortable. Then find the next challenge.
Right.
And that is so true in every aspect. Yeah.
Well, dude, Allan, thank you so much for being here. There's a lot of great takeaways there lined up in terms of just how to start looking at what a high-performance team could look like, how that's driven by culture, how to get started and actually put it into action. Before we close, let people know where they can connect with you.
The best way to connect with me is my work email address, which is aburkley, ABURKLEY, at meridianbanker, all one word, .com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. And if you liked what you heard today here on Stay Paid, please go onto iTunes, throw us a 5-star rating, and let somebody else know about the podcast. You can also find our podcast in video on staypaidpodcast.com. And if you'd like to get hold of me or Luke, please check us out on Instagram. We are at Stay Paid Podcast on Instagram as well. And of course, you can check out Reminder Media on social media. We're at Reminder Media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. For this episode of Stay Paid, I'm Joshua Stike.
And guys, my name's Luke, and I will tell you, go back and listen to this podcast again, because as you actually dive into the details of what Allan's saying, he actually really has laid out a really firm foundation for how you build a good culture and good organization. And I know it because over the last so many years of trying to lead Reminder Media, so many of the suggestions he gave, like a quarterly meeting, we've implemented a quarterly meeting. A mentorship program, we've implemented a mentorship program. These type of things that he gave and tips that maybe you missed in just listening to the story, these are the things that actually Reminder Media has failed at and started to implement, and we've seen more success. But here's your action item, because I think it's the most critical in order to start building a high performance team and ultimately a culture, is your culture is going to flow from what you believe. So you first need to figure out what is it that you believe in and what is it that you want to accomplish. And one of the things that Allan said at the beginning of the podcast, which I think is super powerful, that it has to be more than just a materialistic thing. And the longer I go about my life and the longer I lead teams, the more I realize how true that is. You must state really clearly to yourself, why are you in this game? What is that why? Maybe you call it, what is that belief? What is that vision that you're after to see the world? Define that, and then you must commit yourself to that. And out of that commitment and that obsession and that evangelistic attitude towards that commitment to your vision, your culture will naturally develop. First, take action putting that down on paper, and you'll start seeing yourself being able to develop a great culture, a high-performance team. Remember, the difference between a top producer and a mediocre producer in every business is a top producer doesn't just listen to Stay Paid podcasts. A top producer actually puts it into action, so take action on that today.